So our next speaker will be Greg Peterson. Greg is a former Air Force. Greg is our Veterans Officer here in Brown County. He's done a wonderful job for all of us veterans. We all know him. He's very, very active, very involved. He served as the state of Minnesota veteran officer for about 2 years because of the COVID. And we're happy to have him here to speak with us today.
Thank you, Rick, and thank you to everybody that's come out today. I'm sure those of you sitting out in the sun are so happy that the wind is blowing. Maybe we can pretend it's prop wash. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the markings on this airplane, and a little bit about the dust-off mission. We call it an airplane, but there's no wings on it. But there really is. That P-51 that flew over earlier, it had wings, right? Those were fixed or affixed to the fuselage. The rotor on the top of this aircraft is shaped like a wing. It's fatter in the front, tapers off in the back. When it spins around, it creates lift. So this is a rotary wing aircraft, and hence why we call it an airplane or an aircraft versus a helicopter. The tail number up there, 59667, I think it is, 59667. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how it got its number. Way back in 1908, the United States Army bought their first airplane. You know who they bought it from? The Wright brothers. And it was aircraft number 1. And then they bought another one. It was aircraft number 2 and 3 and 4 and so on until 1921. They had 69,682 aircraft in their inventory. And the numbers weren't fitting on the tail anymore. So what they did is they changed it. And the 5 in this tail number usually will have another number preceding. It's not up there, but it stands for 65. And a lot of people think that's the year it was built. And as a matter of fact, Roy told us it is the year it was built. But the Defense Department, when they buy aircraft, they buy them using the fiscal year of the government. So the first of the fiscal year is October 1st, 1964, but it's really fiscal year 65. So this aircraft, when it was purchased by the government from Bell Helicopter, it was the money was allocated in fiscal year 1965, and hence that's why it's got the 5 up there. The following numbers are just the serial numbers that followed along in the lot of aircraft that were purchased then. They might have purchased 300, 400, and they're all numbered in that lot. This one's 667. The one coming after it would have been 668, 669, and so on. Way up on the tail, it's kind of hard to see. In fact, I can't see it. But I saw when I came out here the other night. There's an arrow and the word that says danger pointing backwards. Anybody wonder why that is? I think danger, injure. Danger, injure. That tail rotor is 8 feet in diameter and it spins around at about 100 miles an hour. It's literally a guillotine. On the other side of the aircraft is where the fuel is put in. And you can walk around it and see there's a big red disc. And it's a cover for where the fuel hose attaches. And right there beside the fuel attachment, it tells what kind of fuel must go in it. We can't just put any old fuel in these. It would be probably JP, Roy would know, JP8, JP4, JP, jet propellant. This aircraft has a jet engine on the top of it. You wouldn't ordinarily know that. It doesn't have a reciprocating engine with pistons. It's called a turbojetter, or a jet turbine, I think is exactly what they call it. There's some more serial numbers up here by the door, but we can't see those. The Geneva Convention was held after the completion of World War II in 1947. And they defined how medical evacuation vehicles, aircraft, and such would be marked. Prior to the Geneva Convention, all medical evacuation aircraft were painted completely white, all white, and then they had a big red cross on the tail. Well, in 1947, they said, no, you can paint it whatever color you want as long as it has a white field with a red cross on it. Most of us all remember the TV series MASH. Their hospital tents were green, but they had big red crosses with a white field behind it. Also, in that Geneva Convention, medical personnel were considered non-combatants. They weren't hopping out of the ship, guns ablaze, and in an offensive position. They could carry arms. Generally, they carry a sidearm or a handgun. A crew chief might carry an M16, but was strictly for the protection of themselves. So it's another reason why this airplane, we would call it a slick. And we're talking about slicks that has no weapons on it. It was the most vulnerable aircraft going into a landing zone to pick up wounded. So how did it get its call sign Dust Off? Roy mentioned the noise of the helicopter, seeing this helicopter. The only thing that was missing was the prop wash. Well, in 1963, a guy named Major Chuck Kelly, he was the commander of the 57th Medical Detachment, said that the rotor wash blows the dust off the ground. Literally, when they come into land, anything that's just dust or loose whoosh, blows away. So he called his medical evacuation Dust Off. And it sticks until this day. The Dust Off call sign probably would have been, I know they called this one specifically Little Bear, but a Dust Off mission might have been Dust Off 667 for its tail numbers. I know that there are many people in this group that are here, and I thank you, that were airlifted into combat, and I know some personally that were airlifted out of combat when they were wounded. And I talked to some of those guys, and they told me that it was about 30 minutes from being wounded to when they were laying on an operating table because of the Dust Off mission. Getting back to 9/11, there was another phrase that was uttered in one of those aircraft that we would have heard on transcripts. And it was the aircraft that was taken down by its passengers at Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Just prior to those brave men and women that stormed that cockpit, we heard someone call, "Let's roll." And "let's roll" became the phrase that we've used now since 9/11 in the global war on terror. And I can just imagine that a flight of dust-off aircraft, just prior to them taking off, that the lead pilot probably would have said, "Let's roll." Thank you very much.